Shadow of the Colossus. Although a commercial failure on the PlayStation 2, it was a critical success. Back in the day, the game was a technical behemoth, featuring a huge open world, fantastic visuals, and most of all, towering beasts that players needed to climb in unique and different ways to take them out. Perhaps what made Shadow of the Colossus such a fantastic game was its simplicity in design and how it used the relatively empty open world as its strength with the help of a truly wonderful score. Despite being a commercial failure, Sony went ahead and released the remastered version of the game on the PS3 in 2011. It featured remastered textures, improved visual effects, but most importantly, it fixed the PlayStation 2's terrible frame rate. But for some reason or the other, the game felt like it was way ahead of the technology at the time. Even the mighty PlayStation 3 felt like it wasn't really doing justice to this wonderfully crafted game. So when Sony announced that they were remaking the game on the PlayStation 4, I couldn't help but feel pretty excited about it. Ever since E3 2017, where it was first announced, I always believed that the PlayStation 4 was the right platform for Shadow of the Colossus. And if anything, this point of view was solidified through the pre-release content released by Sony in the last few months. Now, after playing through the game on the PlayStation 4, I can confidently claim that Shadow of the Colossus on the PS2 and the PS3 was way ahead of its time. The game needed a platform to truly shine, and to truly achieve its vision, and the PlayStation 4 is the definitive platform that truly does justice to this piece of art. Other than fixing the numerous bugs from the PlayStation 2 and 3 versions, Shadow of the Colossus PS4 Remake, as the name suggests, it's a completely new game in that it's been built from the ground up. Surprisingly enough though, the game uses the same codebase as the PlayStation 2, which makes sense given that it wouldn't make sense to reprogram the same AI behavior and various Colossi puzzles. But the biggest improvements come in the form of massive visual modifications the team at Bluepoint made to the game's core engine modules. One of the gifts of the current generation of consoles is the ability to use physical-based rendering pipelines, which result in realistic lighting effects based on the type of material light is falling upon. This is extremely important in a game like Shadow of Colossus, which uses incredible variety in environments such as deserts, grasslands, waterfalls, and many others. This implementation of the PBR system in the game's core engine allowed developers to include realistic interactions between the lighting environment and the materials that describe the world. So whether it be the lush forests, or dark interiors, or sand-blown deserts, the engine transitions the game's lighting beautifully and gracefully. One really only needs to look at the PS2 and PS3 versions to see the drastic difference in material quality, atmospheric effects, texture filtering, and draw distance. Everything, as expected, looks amazing and super crisp. The remake also employs dynamic depth of field, motion blur, volumetric fog, light shafts, and advanced color grading, which all really help to set the mood right. The team at Bluepoint also used advanced data streaming and aggressive level of detail methodologies, so that maximum amounts of detail could be resolved in areas surrounding the player. The game does suffer from pop-in issues at times, but to be honest, they're kept to a minimum thanks to aggressive texture streaming solutions. Sony claims that all of the organic, natural elements in the world were manually placed by artists and that there's over 150,000 rock instances, 11,000 tree instances, with other objects totaling 290,000 instances. No wonder the remake looks extremely detailed compared to the original version. So yeah, character models and environment details quality has drastically gone up. But what about the Colossi? Well, let's get this right out of the way. The original Colossi on the PS2 and PS3 were a sight to behold, but playing them remade for the 4K generation on the PlayStation 4 Pro is an altogether different experience. Sony claims that they went from 20,000 triangles in the original PS2 release to around 250,000 triangles in the PlayStation 4 Remake for each Colossus. That's more than a tenfold increase, but perhaps the biggest improvement comes in the form of dynamic fur. Back in 2005, there wasn't really a high-end fur technology, but for its time, the solution they had worked. According to Sony, the PlayStation 4 Remake has received special treatment, as the developers treated each strand via a set of texture maps that defined various parameters, such as strand stiffness, length, color, and flow direction. In short, the fur on each Colossus varies differently, and is unique in the way it behaves according to its movement, weather effects, and a host of other dynamic parameters. So it's clear the PS4 Remake is head and shoulders above the PS2 and PS3 versions, but what about the PS4 version itself? Besides the numerous improvements that I mentioned, the game runs at a smooth 30 frames per second and at a native 1080p resolution. Unfortunately, the game doesn't run at 60 FPS on the base PS4 SKU, but its big brother, the PlayStation 4 Pro, has a couple of different graphical modes that should make owners of Pros very happy. The PS4 Pro version comes with two different modes, Cinematic 4K and Performance. The Cinematic mode runs the game at 1440p at 30 FPS, whereas the Performance mode renders the game at 1080p and 60 FPS. I personally prefer playing the game at 60 FPS as the experience changes drastically compared to the Cinematic 30 FPS mode. And so there we have it. Shadow of the Colossus has finally made its way to the PS4, and what a remake it is. With a host of visual upgrades, phenomenal graphics, PS4 Pro support, and most importantly, gameplay that still feels fresh more than 12 years after its original release. Is it fair to claim that this is perhaps the greatest remake of all time? Well, the answer is a resounding yes. This is by far Bluepoint Games' best work, and we only hope that the PS4's rampaging success will hopefully make Shadow of the Colossus Remake a commercial success this time around, unlike its PS2 counterpart.